Did you know that Kurt Cobain grew up in a household full of emotionally troubled people? As a teenager, Kurt had already attempted to end his life by lying on train tracks. This pain suggests the possibility that he was a scapegoat. Do you know the mysteries that shaped Kurt's actions and how psychology explains his death? You are watching The Dark Side of the Stars, and today we will uncover the dark side of this star called Kurt Cobain. Kurt Donald Cobain was born on February 20th, 1967, in Aberdeen, USA. He was the first of two children of Wendy and Donald Cobain. Kurt was a very loved and active little boy who showed an extraordinary ear for music from an early age. He began singing and playing piano in his childhood. He also loved drawing, a talent his family appreciated and encouraged. However, this peaceful and loving childhood began to crumble when, at the age of 7, Kurt was diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and was prescribed Ritalin at an early age, along with sedatives for insomnia. Shortly after, at age 9, Kurt's world fell apart when his parents signed their divorce papers. This was a massive disappointment for the young boy. Suddenly, all his friends and family could talk about was the separation, which left Kurt feeling deeply ashamed. He expressed his pain through his art, scribbling grotesque caricatures of his parents on walls with captions like, "My parents are jerks." This shame made it difficult for Kurt to connect with his friends, turning him into an antisocial child. The situation worsened when his father remarried, and his mother entered into an abusive relationship. Kurt witnessed deeply disturbing events, like his stepfather breaking his mother's arm and his mother threatening him with a gun. As a teenager, Kurt seemed to have one goal: to provoke everyone around him. His mother, overwhelmed, sent him to live with his father. But Kurt didn't get along with him either. His father sent him to live with his grandparents, who then passed him along to his uncles. Eventually, his father picked him up in the middle of the night and dropped him off at his mother's house. School wasn't any easier. Kurt had almost no friends and was constantly bullied by older boys from the football team. They insulted, spat on, and beat him because they thought he was gay just because he dyed his hair and hung out with girls. Kurt later shared that, although he wasn't gay, he wished he were just to piss off the homophobes. At 13, Kurt began smoking a lot of marijuana, eventually smoking daily. He then moved on to drinking, stealing, vandalizing, and graffitiing around town. Amid all this chaos, there was a girl at his school who was constantly bullied for being shy and not doing well academically. One day, Kurt skipped class, went to her house, and bluntly asked, "So, wanna have sex?" She agreed, but Kurt, not knowing what to do, finished quickly and left feeling disgusted. The next day, the rumor spread around school. Everyone was waiting for Kurt, ready to spit on him and call him a retard chaser. Unable to deal with the humiliation, Kurt drowned himself in alcohol and marijuana, then went to the town's train tracks, lay down, and waited for a train to run him over. The train came, but it switched to a parallel track at the last moment. Still lost, Kurt dropped out of school in his final year. Not working or studying, his mother kicked him out of the house. During this time, he slept wherever he could and spent his days drinking and using drugs. But it wasn't all chaos. During this period, Kurt developed a deep passion for the guitar. When he started playing, his goal was to learn Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. But as punk music entered his life, he began combining his Led Zeppelin influence with a more Sex Pistols style. In 1985, Kurt formed his first band, Fecal Matter, with Buzz Osborne from the Melvins, who introduced him to punk rock. This band caught the attention of his schoolmate Chris Novoselic, who decided to join him. In 1987, Nirvana was born. Their first album, Bleach, 1989, saw modest success. But the breakthrough came in 1991 with the release of Nevermind. Not only was it a phenomenal success, but it also sparked a cultural revolution worldwide. Nirvana changed the music scene forever, and Kurt, almost overnight, became the most famous rock star in the world. But fame came at a heavy price. Kurt began spiraling into drug use, particularly heroin. In the early 90s, Kurt met Courtney Love, who also used heroin. Within a year, they were married and had a daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. Many hoped fatherhood would calm Kurt down, But that wasn't the case. His heroin use continued, and at one point, Child Protective Services temporarily took Francis away. Things kept getting worse. Kurt had several overdoses and even attempted suicide in March 1994 with a cocktail of pills and alcohol, leaving him in a coma at a hospital in Rome. Just 15 days later, police were called to his Seattle home after Kurt locked himself in a bathroom with a shotgun and a box of pills. His family and friends staged an intervention, and by the end of March, Kurt agreed to enter rehab. But just days later, he escaped the facility by jumping over a wall. He wasn't found until April 9, 1994, when he was discovered at his home, having tragically taken his own life. Kurt was only 27, becoming another member of the infamous 27 Club. The scene was horrific. Kurt had shot himself with a shotgun and left a note addressed to his childhood imaginary friend, saying he no longer felt joy in creating or listening to music and couldn't bear the thought of his daughter becoming as miserable and self-destructive as he had. Psychologists have noted that Kurt's mental suffering likely exacerbated physical pain, which could have been psychosomatic. However, his autopsy revealed that his chronic stomach pain may have been caused by scoliosis, which compressed his abdomen. Kurt came from a family with a history of mental illness and suicide. 2 uncles and a great-uncle had taken their lives in the same manner. His mother, Wendy Cobain, later shared that, in addition to childhood ADHD, Kurt was diagnosed as bipolar as an adult, which worsened his heroin addiction. Kurt Cobain's legacy transformed the history of rock forever. But how can we understand his life through psychology? The turmoil in Kurt's life seems to have started within his family and later extended to his social world. The disintegration of his family, steeped in destructiveness and problematic ancestry, fell heavily on him, as it often does in families and social groups. Kurt Cobain appeared to have been chosen as a scapegoat within his family. In psychoanalysis, this is a fascinating case. A child who provokes, demands, asks questions, makes noise. When a family struggles to cope, they unconsciously perceive the child as threatening, as a source of disruption. This seems to have happened with Kurt, who was treated as a hot potato within his family, passed from mother to father, father to grandparents, grandparents to uncles, and back to his mother. French historian, anthropologist, and philosopher René Girard studied this phenomenon extensively. He explains that in primitive tribes, it was common to designate someone or an animal as a sacrificial scapegoat to release tensions threatening the group's order. This dynamic persists in modern families and social groups, as it did in Kurt's family, where destructive patterns were externalized by making one person bear the blame for everyone else. The same pattern reproduced in Kurt's school environment. His provocations and noise made him a scapegoat for his peers, who pinned all blame on him. The unsettling truth is that scapegoating serves a social function. It protects the group from widespread violence by focusing tensions on one individual. Kurt's self-destruction, a life burdened by shame from years of exclusion, culminated in his death. His farewell letter, addressed to his childhood imaginary friend, reveals the profound loneliness he must have felt. In the end, Kurt Cobain sacrificed himself, much like the rituals of ancient tribes, to save his daughter from his own shame. In the next episode of The Dark Side of the Stars, one of the greatest stars of all time went out, and to this day his death remains unknown. But after all, what are the mysteries behind Tupac's death, and how does psychology explain it? Could he have caused his own death? Don't miss the next episode of The Dark Side of the Stars.